So I'm going to talk a little bit about government regulation of artificial intelligence here today. What is being done now? Is it too little, too late? That's the big question that a lot of people have, especially given that there's, AI is really the top of mind for very many people around the world. Since last November, when OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, put out their product, they've had over 100 million monthly active users of the of the ChatGPT. You hear it all over the place. Currently, they're valued at 20 billion US dollars. And ChatGPT, believe it or not, is available in over 156 countries, used in businesses, as well as just available to the public. Microsoft also collaborates with OpenAI with their Bing AI, is actually utilizing the ChatGPT system. And then DALL-E is the artistic and creative app that you can use for artistic creations, and that's also utilizing information and programs from OpenAI. As you know, ChatGPT can generate text, but it also can create images through DALL-E, video and audio that resembles human work. So that's really some of the concerns that people have, and I'll go a little bit more in detail about that. Also, some other commonly used AI tools that you may have heard of are Siri, Alexa. Google Bard is Google's attempt to come into the AI arena, and they unfortunately kind of flopped at the very beginning. It didn't work very well, and it kind of presented a lot of really bizarre hallucinatory type responses to people, and so they're revamping that currently. Midjourney is a creative AI application that presents creative opportunities for people to create all kinds of scenarios. And I'll talk about that a little bit later and how it's being used in various different places. MS Office is actually looking to integrate AI into their whole platform. So if you have Microsoft Office 365, which is their online subscription service, you will have AI there to use, and it sounds very interesting what they're going to be able to do with that. Adobe Creative Cloud has been using it, Photoshop and Premiere Pro for video has been using it a little bit every now and then with some neural networks and stuff, but they're looking to expand very much more and putting a lot of effort into that. Everywhere you read, AI is not going away, even though some people are really afraid of it. It is becoming integral to many businesses. I'll talk a little bit later about how it's being used, but it is being used in healthcare, law firms, and financial businesses for transactions, from a data perspective, but also from a stock selection perspective as well. One of the concerns, of course, is that AI will take over the world, especially given what's happened recently in China, where there is an AI tool that actually has designed a working computer. And they say, of course, that this is to help transform the semiconductor industry and make it easier to create new semiconductors and computers. But also, it's a major step towards building self-evolving machines. And so some people are going to take a look at that and go, oh my God, we're moving to the age of the Terminator and stuff like this, right? Where, computers and AI is creating their own machines. And perhaps, and really this was done at a speed that is just unheard of, that you just can't compete in the human space. World governments, there's a lot of different concerns out there for world governments with regards to the use of artificial intelligence. So there are 6 common areas that they are concerned in. Ethics and accountability, where the accountability of AI decisions and addressing potential biases is something that's really very important, because we've had instances where AI is actually discriminatory to African Americans. A program in the U.S. Was tagged as not hiring African Americans because of their potential for being criminals. That's the way the AI saw it. And so that was a big hullabaloo actually a number of years ago in an HR software that was utilizing AI. So these are concerns and very reasonable concerns. Data privacy and protection is a big one. I'll go a little bit more in depth on that in how the EU is tackling that. Job displacement, economic impact. They suspect recently there was a study that looked at 300 million people worldwide could lose their jobs to artificial intelligence. An example in the law field is that 10 lawyers took about 90 minutes to uncover 75% of contractual errors. So what they were provided, both the lawyers and the AI were given a contract that had specific errors in it, and it took the lawyers 90 minutes to find it, whereas it took the AI 6 seconds. And they had the AI actually had a much better success rate than did the lawyers. So it's unfortunately not, and lawyers are expensive, as you well know. And so it's not, rocket science to realize that there could be huge savings both financially and in terms of speed as well. So these are possible, that's just one possible example. There's so many others that we could look at as well. Many countries may need to usher in the universal basic income scenarios to survive. That's another article that came out recently in the press, even talking about that in the U.S. And the U.S., of course, has been very much against that. I know universal basic income is something that's been discussed in Europe and in some of the Nordic countries, I believe. Maybe Shores, better than I do on some of that.
I doesn't ring a bell.
No.
No.
Basically, it's providing, I think the way that they're looking at it in the U.S., one of the proposals in the U.S. for universal basic income was providing every adult with $1,000 per month basic income just to survive. And that is not having to work or anything of that nature. It's just basically giving people basic.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's a social network or
Yes.
network, but it's not. You can choose either to work or get 1,000. It's
Correct. Yeah,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah, yeah. And as these people get displaced by AI, they may not have anything to fall back on. So that's where people are talking about this. Governments are talking about the possibility that this may be something that we need to consider in the next 10 to 20 years, maybe even sooner. Security, cybersecurity, cyber threats are always a problem. Potential misuse of AI for malicious purposes is out there. The U.S. Republican Party has already produced a political ad with 100% AI-generated imagery. It had imagery that included the current president, Biden, as well as his vice president, Kamala Harris. And it created situations of unrest at the border with immigration. It created a crime scene in San Francisco and other places, all of it 100% AI generated. And they all looked, I've seen the ad. It's on YouTube. You can take a look at it. And it is about a minute. And it really looks like it's absolutely real, like it's taken from actual video footage. And so it's those are the kinds of things that really are concerning governments, and that people could be duped and could be potentially misled. So there is international collaboration standards as well as national security and defense concerns. European Union is at the forefront of looking at this and really trying to address the whole issue around AI. They do have European consumer protection groups have urged their regulators to investigate these AI programs like ChatGPT and others. They say that they pose risk to consumers, as we've talked about, manipulating people through made-up news articles and social media posts, but also could provide incorrect medical information. As we've mentioned, there's been a number of times where these have presented information that's totally made up, and the AI made it up. It's not from anything that they have been trained to put out. And then there's, of course, the potential use of personal data, company data, The EU Artificial Intelligence Act, which actually has a website, artificial-intelligence.act.com, is actually a comprehensive set of regulations that for the artificial intelligence industry that the European Union has been looking at for some time now, actually for a year or maybe 2 more years. The law does propose that AI systems be reviewed before commercial release, and they seek to ban real-time and post-facial recognition, as it is an invasion of privacy. There are, of course, exclusions for law enforcement and for criminal activity. They talk about predictive policing and emotion recognition systems as being intrusive and potential discriminatory. So they have a whole list of systems and activities that are considered intrusive personally, as well as discriminatory. The European Parliament just recently approved the current act, and they need to negotiate further with the other 2 parties in the European Union. The approval is expected at the end of the year, may not be implemented though until 2024 or 2025. And that's the concern of this European consumer groups, as well as others, is that the regulation is just going to take too long. These things are moving at such a fast rate that there's not a whole lot that can be done. In the US, the situation is a little bit more bleak. Some regulations have touched upon certain aspects of AI, such as privacy, security, anti-discrimination, but there's no comprehensive federal legislation dedicated solely to AI regulation. There doesn't even appear to be anything in place that's comprehensive as what the European Union is doing. So in the US, it's still in its very early stages. In 2021, Joe Biden did sign an executive order which highlighted the importance of promoting innovation in AI, but also making sure that it was used ethically and was fair and unbiased.
Hey, Dale.
Yeah.
What exactly are American values that would have to protect?
Well,
I love that we're on a global call here. I mean, I'm being facetious, but that just like jumps out at me as kind of funny. Like, why do we need to protect American values? Isn't about everybody's values? And I'm not trying to be negative or critical of it. I'm just saying, like, why wouldn't it be, global human values or something like that? But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they're talking about, freedom of speech, and,
yeah,
and when they talk about it, it's some of the it really wasn't described per se, Daniel,
yeah,
exactly what they meant by that. But, that's kind of some of the rhetoric that we deal with here in the US, I think.
yeah. It's true. That's our little. But I suppose any country would write it the same way. They would write it for their country-centric thing. So maybe it's no big deal.
It depends on the audience, I suppose, as well. If they're talking to like a political audience versus kind of an audience that's just interested in a human-centered perspectiveness of this as well, I think you try to change it to the kind of American values if it has a slightly political connotation, because it kind of appeals to a voting population, maybe. But that's just from reading it. It kind of seems to me that's the way it's going.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and it's, they obviously were writing that for the United States. It wasn't being written for a global audience, so
yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, that's right.
But it would be nice to see that kind of inclusive language being used for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good points. Good points. So basically, we in conclusion for this, spark, there are evolving concerns in the field of artificial intelligence. Not just governments, but even experts in the field have called for concern. There is a panel that was just formed here in the U.S. with OpenAI, in fact, that's looking at super intelligence. So basically, when they say super intelligence, it's a fairly new term, but it's really what is human level intelligence in artificial intelligence, so that we're places where you can't tell the difference between a human and a machine. So and making sure that those are reined in. There is need for ongoing monitoring, regulation. Many people say that it's too little, too late, the genie's out of the bottle, and there's no way, one, it's going back in, but you've got so many people being able to utilize this. And some people have standards and rules and regulations, but many others don't. And especially some countries may actually decide to utilize it in ways that may be detrimental to humanity as a whole. And that's really some of the big concerns from the experts in the field.
Well done. Somewhat concerning.
Yeah, now the big question is, how will artificial intelligence really play out in healthcare? And what will we expect? And where are the ethics boundaries there? Or from our focus?
Yeah. So, I mean, and I was just kind of going over some of the basics for the governments and what governments are thinking about. There's a lot of stuff out there with regards to healthcare. A lot of physicians now are actually utilizing ChatGPT in how do I give bad information to my patient. That's one recent study that has shown that a lot of physicians have tough times giving bad information to patients, whether it's on cancer or you need to go into hospice or whatever the case is. They have problems because really what they're finding is that these are the kinds of questions that are being asked by healthcare professionals to help them relay information, help them communicate with their patients. And I thought that was very fascinating because it goes back to what Brian Hodges was talking about when he gave a keynote speech at the APMEC conference in 2018 that I attended. And his comment to the assembled deans of the schools of medicine and other schools in Asia Pacific region, and he was talking about, are you admitting into medical school the right type of student? Because of the way technology is coming, we're not going to need the super scientist. We're going to need the person that's going to be able to interpret the information to patients so that they can actually have the best possible care. And it's the human touch that we've been talking about here on the FIC for quite some time now. And so that it's rather fascinating. And there's other areas too, Ava, that are being used within healthcare. But from more of an administrative type of stuff, connecting EHRs together and making sure that data is accessible, but yet also protected. So there's a lot of activity going on. I mean, you can go on and on and on with this stuff, it seems.
I think if you relate it to learning, you should also look at the how do you call that? Actuality of the data. As for example, now ChatGPT goes up until 2 years back.
Yeah.
So do you get the latest if you go to patient diagnosis, and if you go to that part of using AI for your medical practice? And it was funny because there's in the legal system, that's the bigger thing, obviously. If your answer comes from ChatGPT, who then is responsible for the answer? And apparently there's already been some cases where lawyers blindly trusted on previous cases that were made up by ChatGPT and basically flunked the whole lawsuit. So there's not only indeed privacy of patients and stuff, but also who is eventually responsible for potentially the death of a patient if you just blindly use ChatGPT as your diagnosis system.
Yeah, there's a big challenge at the moment around certain mental health therapy and other similar organizations who have reached kind of like huge mass of people and they can't respond to it. So they've used, sometimes not telling people, like an AI In some cases, just like a basic version of like kind of an internal ChatGPT or something like that to respond to mental health needs, which is like a huge risk, you know, that you've got this bot basically giving you slightly generic information based on it. So there's a whole ethical piece as well of like, you know, within that mental health space and therapy, you know, if someone is suicidal or whatever it might be, like the ethics of providing that as a means to try and support them doesn't seem to be aligned, at least not at the moment. So like I've seen quite a few recently as well around self-diagnosis and huge challenges. Like it's I think there's a big educational piece around what I would call almost citizenship, like AI citizenship. You know, how do we have the safe, savvy, and ethical use of AI, and kind of focusing on that.
That's an important it's an important point, and you know, ChatGPT is just one system, and it has been, you know, it's one of the large language, you know, models that has been, to your point, Shores, you know, trained up until I think it's September 2021. So any data between, you know, after that is not included in it, and it actually tells you that when you ask for something that's more recent, they say, well, this is what I have so far, but realize that I'm only programmed until this date. But, you know, it's going to require other systems. And what happens, because right now that's kind of you know, you have this large language model, which is very limited, and it doesn't go out to the internet to get information, which a lot of people think about. What happens when you have these things get out to the internet and are able to take a look at the internet and
But
really
we also know
evolve?
that yeah, but then actually the danger again is that there is also a lot of
Trust.
problematic data in the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So who is then actually looking into, you know, is this evidence-based medicine what is coming out or not? But I could see, you know, we have it in radiology and yours, you know, with Nina we discussed this at one point of time. We have it in radiology, where I think actually artificial intelligence could help, yeah, to spot something quickly and to support the human. Maybe surgery is another thing where, especially if you go into microsurgery, yeah. So question is, for me, what do clinicians or HCPs need to acquire on skills over the next 10 years to be fit for all this technology?
Well, and that's it. It's how do you use it, and not solely relying on it. I mean, that's one of the big things when you read out there is that you have to check everything. I mean, there were instances. There was a neighbor of ours is a lawyer, and he was aware of a case and told us about a case where they actually they sent it to the AI, and the AI gave a review of the whole overall thing, and actually presented two cases that were fake, that were cases that were supposedly, you know, tried in the U.S., and these were the results, and you know, nobody of the lawyers even checked it, and so this went through until the judge said, wait a minute, these don't sound familiar, how come I don't know about these cases? And so yeah, it really relies on the human to be sure that the sources are appropriate and all of this stuff.
I mean, what I find fascinating too is, you know, yes, I think we're appropriately critical and, you know, of this, what can be done or what can happen here. But, you know, it wasn't too long ago that we were like solely reliant on, say, a specific medical journal. And well, geez, if the New England Journal of Medicine editorial board published something, it must be right, or if there was a meta-analysis that got published in the Lancet, it's got to be good. We just have to, and it's like, well, no, we always need to, I think, use the human touch, the human critique, whether it's that judge, right, Dale, who was like, wait a minute, I've studied a lot of case law. I've never heard this before, we should have healthcare professionals who are able to, as they grow their breadth of knowledge, be like, wait a second, where did this come from? Like
I think isn't that exactly the point where, because those journals they earn their credit, and they make sure they have to live up to a certain standard. And for now, we do not know who feeds ChatGPT, for example, with information. And I think medicine for a long time already used AI in a way with Dr. Watson, which is maybe not exactly AI, but you throw in a bunch of symptoms and the computer tells you what kind of disease someone has. And from what I read, they use it pretty intensively.
Even if it wasn't a good business model for IBM.
Still, it's sort of,
yeah.
I don't know what, I'm too lazy to look it up or to make connections, so I'll let a computer who has, obviously all that information as well, make the decision. And then obviously up to you, is it true, is it factual, is it applicable? But I think at the moment, the biggest scare is maybe that we don't know who to blame if the answer is wrong.
This was my question to the Republican example from Dale. So if they did this completely with ChatGPT or artificial intelligence, the two ads, then is it their fault if it's actually a lie? Who is then legally responsible, the computer or the Republican Party?
Is it who created it?
Or the companies that aired it, that allowed it to be aired on their.
So it's YouTube.
Well, it's YouTube, yeah. So it's what Meta is the owning.
There's a really, really good. I don't know if you watch Black Mirror on Netflix. Oh yeah. So there's a recent one that's come up, and it's basically the person's watching Netflix and they see their life appear as a show, and as they're acting and interacting, what they're doing is being shown by an AI generated version of like a famous person who is acting as them. So when they look at it, it's a famous person's image, but it's their life that's just happened in the last half hour or 10 minutes, right? And it's based on the idea that your phone, your computer, everything is gathering so much information that no matter what you do, it can hear and kind of make kind of a concept of it, so that it can, if you throw that into an AI machine, it can generate it immediately. So it can be watched live by other people based on the information that you're giving into it and the AI generation. So what's interesting about it from a law perspective, or kind of like is that the image is like, I think it's, I don't know, some famous actress anyway, but the person who the life it's showing decides that she's going to do the most crazy thing where she ends up in a church and she pukes and she does all this. So that means the likeness of this actor has to do all these things. So the actor then goes to the company and says, I didn't agree to my likeness doing all of this stuff. So then she goes and knocks on the person's door and like, how do we fix this? So it's the thing of like, you've signed your likeness away, but it's not you, it's just an AI representation of you, but still it's associated with you. And how does it all line up? So it's interesting, but just if you're looking for some like a really like positive kind of like nice site around AI, site.ai there that I put in the chat is really cool because it's like ChatGPT, but it doesn't create articles, and it gives you the references in APA style, and you can pull them all out and you can check the DOIs and everything of the articles. So that to me so that's gold. So I'm using that right now to try and get through my PhD, because it kind of allows you to go through the trees a little bit quicker and put things together. And then you can obviously go and reference and read and you pull it out yourself. But honestly, well worth a look. I recommend it.
So David, is that like open access as a subscription? Because there's There was a company, sorry, is it subscription?
Yeah, you pay about, I think it's 20 quid a month if you just pay per month, and then it's a bit cheaper then. There's a pricing at the top of the page. So $20 per month, or if you pay for the year, $12 per month.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another one I could recommend to you. I haven't used it only because I think it's really, their pricing is all geared towards corporations, but I was at a medical affairs meeting and the president of Huma.ai, HUMA, spoke, and what they've set up is they've fenced in Chat GPT, but it's just for healthcare journals and medical journals.
I like this. This is cool.
Yeah. So
I mean, then the other topic actually associated is big data, yeah, and how is big data analyzed with artificial intelligence? Because as you know, you brought the human resource example, but this could be the same actually in medicine. If you have input and you actually pull it in a certain direction, then there could be mistakes. So my question is, I think it's a super, and I don't know exactly because I was not here the last 3 times. I'm not quite sure why we did this session today, which I thought was super interesting. Thank you, Dale. But do we want to bring this in a debate, in a discussion, and also look if we find?
I think it should be one of the webinars that we do,
Yeah.
for sure. I think probably we need like an AI series. We probably need to like choose 3 themes, do 3 or 4 per team, and kind of focus on that. So one could be like your introductory to AI. And Dale, we could get you to maybe moderate, given that you've kind of given a bit of insight there with like a couple of AI experts. Maybe the cybersecurity thing is actually quite interesting because we'll all need to know that even in medical education. Like I think that could be quite cool. And a couple of other.
The ethical perspective, David.
Absolutely, 100%. We could probably, I don't know if we end or start with that. But I think it could be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, there's a lot of, I think one of the big points is that it's here and we need to know how to best use it. And I think that's one of the things that we could provide as the FIC is, how's the best way to use this? I mean, if you think about what we do a lot of the times is we go to other people to have them do things for us. So we go to lawyers to have them do something for us. We go to copywriters to have them, edit our books or edit our papers or things like that. We have other people that do things for us. And this is just another tool that's now being utilized to do that for us. And as long as you are appropriately giving credit where credit is due, I mean, how do we do that before, right? How do we do that when we had a copywriter? How do we do that when we had an editor? They were noted in the book that this was edited by XYZ person. So now instead it's going to be we're using Midjourney to create the visuals, and we're using ChatGPT for copy editing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to start doing that, making sure there's attribution where it's due. But I just have one other quick story on this. So there's this daily columnist who I read, I get an email every day on it, and he's a medical doctor. But one day I'm reading this one article, it's one column, and I'm like, this doesn't totally sound like him. But well, anyway, and then the next day his column is, I just want to come clean, folks. My column was completely generated by ChatGPT, and he actually shared the prompt, which was about 4 paragraphs long. It was a long prompt.
Yeah.
But he said, use my name and use my style and write on this topic was kind of the gist of the prompt. And here came this, and he said, write a 3,000 word column, op-ed piece on this, that, or the other thing using my style. And so I guess ChatGPT was able to go and source, his columns previously, and then take it and synthesize this new topic. And that kind of stuff to me is like, what? This is nuts, that it can be that close. And he was like, he said, I did get a couple of people who were like, was this you? You know, did you write this? You know, and I feel like I was kind of like that too. Like there were just certain sectors of his writing that I was like, this doesn't totally sound like him. So it's just amazing what can be done right now. I mean, the potential for good is amazing, but like you pointed out, Dale, the concerns are even more, you know, like, oof.
I love that you noticed, though. I think that's quite interesting. Like, you don't know why you noticed, but you just know. And I think at the moment, like I'm noticing as well in work, I have an intern and a few other people who are working with me, and I can tell almost straight away when they've used ChatGPT. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I've had to go back to them and say, look, we're going to have to kind of rejig this so that if we give this to a partner, I don't want them, like, there's almost a sense of you don't want them to know you're using these things, which is quite a strange kind of way to, I don't know. Curious about
really
that.
Funny.
But I agree, we have several, because ChatGPT for me still is more the question of, can we use it from you know, what did Aaron say, you know, graduation, or as you say, David, thesis perspective, or how we should actually communicate, which I think was also very remarkable that clinicians, so this means actually that clinicians are still missing communication skills, yeah, if they need ChatGPT to actually bring the bad news.
Well, it's true, but you know, they recognize that they have a failing there and are utilizing a tool. So maybe before they would have given it to the nurse or something like that, but now they're saying, okay, I want to be the one that gives that bad information to the patient. But I just know I don't do a good job at that. So let me put it into the Chat GPT and get them to say it, and then they read it, and it helps them to now say it in a way that is much more palatable and not, you know, the standard medical ease and stuff like that. Because they can actually, like you said, Daniel, you can go in there with a prompt and say, I need this at a, you know, 6th grade reading level, a 4th grade reading level, and it puts it at that level, and it is.
But this also shows that there is a missing skill, which is empathy, right?
You can't teach that in medical school. Yep.
Which you don't learn at medical school.
Yeah.
I used it to write motivational letters in my for job interviews. And actually, if you just copy paste the job description and your resume and say, listen, I want to apply for this job. This is my resume. Write me a cover letter. Obviously, you tweak it a little because indeed, as David said, you sometimes sentences don't feel like you would have thought of that or would have said it that way. But for 85, 95%, it is basically copy paste because it is incredibly smart in what it does. And that's relatively safe because I'm not putting somebody's life at risk by doing that.
Right.
But I think, yes, I think we all agreed on that. You need to make sure you don't blindly copy paste whatever comes out of it, and need to know for what purpose you use it, that the sourcing it has to at its disposal are trustworthy, like the Lancets and stuff like that. Because if you read it there, it must be good. If it comes from this source, I can trust it. I still need to check it, but at least it's better than just Googling, hey, I have this little lump on my shoulder, will I die? And then obviously the first 5 results will tell you you'll die tomorrow. So then it's wrong.